This is the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jackson Neill, here on Monday, June 17th, 2019. Today I'm going to be talking about the Anthony Davis trade, that big blockbuster trade between New Orleans and the Lakers. Then, touching on how wide open is it really in the NBA, talking about both of those things. But first, I just want to remind everyone that this podcast is available on all of your favorite platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and SoundCloud. It is also available on JacksonNeillPodcast.com, the home for all of the podcasts that I publish. So, over the weekend, the New Orleans Pelicans and the Los Angeles Lakers finally agreed to a deal that will send Anthony Davis to LA with LeBron James. And the deal was a lot bigger than I think a lot of people expected, as certainly what I expected. The Lakers get Anthony Davis, while the Pelicans receive Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, the number 4 overall pick in this week's draft, and 2 future first-round picks. There's also a lot of, in 2021, if it goes from 1 to 8 or 2022 unprotected, the Lakers 2024 first round with the right to defer until 2025. The Pelicans can also pick swap with the Lakers in 2023. Just a lot of little things in there. But basically what you got to know is in terms of those picks, that there is unprotected draft picks involved in this trade, something that very rarely, if ever, really happens a lot in NBA trades nowadays. So looking at this deal, while the Lakers did receive Anthony Davis, my initial reaction was almost, oh my God, look at the Pelicans. Because I think the New Orleans Pelicans, I think I can kind of safely say that I think in this instance, they won the trade. They got so much more than I think anybody else really expected that they would get for a superstar, yes, but a superstar who has 1 year left on his deal. And let's not forget everything that happened this past season in terms of him not wanting to play there, all the drama that surrounded basically getting the GM and new general management in there because the other one couldn't get rid of him. Just an absolute train wreck of a situation. So they were going to get rid of him, and the fact that the Lakers would give this much is pretty astonishing, especially from the fact that they weren't really bidding against anybody. But I want to get into that a little bit later. I first want to touch on the Pelicans, because I think this trade, first of all, speaks so much about this Pelicans team and really changes my mindset about just how good New Orleans' potential is moving forward. So when they got the first overall pick, people were wondering if Zion would even, go to New Orleans. And I kind of made the argument right around that time that, New Orleans is one of the better situations for him to go to. Even if Anthony Davis got traded away, they'd get assets back. But even, all of that aside, still a solid organization. I mean, especially when you consider what other lottery teams are. Look at somebody like the New York Knicks. It was a pretty solid situation for a player like that. But now you look at Zion and what he's going to be coming into the league with. The backcourt is going to be Jrue Holiday and Lonzo Ball. You're going to have players on the outside, someone like Brandon Ingram, a player who has shown flashes of potential, but I don't think has really realized it. I don't really know what his full upside is. I don't think anybody really does, but there certainly is some upside there. And then Josh Hart, and then I'll get into the picks a little bit later. But just look at the players they got in this haul, and look at how that pairs up with the lineup. You're looking at a lineup next year that will feature a backcourt of Lonzo Ball and Jrue Holiday, 2 players that I think will work very well off each other. Lonzo Ball, a guard who really has it all, has the talent there, but hasn't really been able to put it together very well. And I think that the Lakers situation just has not been great. I think this is a better one. And he's going to be playing with Jrue Holiday. I think their games kind of complement each other in some ways where they're both built as a point guard, but they kind of play off ball in certain situations. They're not really that true point guard. I think something can work there, but I think most importantly, it's going to be a good player for Lonzo Ball to learn things from, because Jrue Holiday has just gotten to the point in his career where he is a reliable veteran who really does a lot, who is a point guard, who was a guard for an NBA team, who you saw paired with Anthony Davis, just not this past playoffs, but the playoffs last year, was able to do some damage in the postseason, was able to make some plays. He's a good NBA player. So I think it's a backcourt that really complements each other while still allowing, the young guy with kind of the veteran. I like that backcourt. Then you're looking at the rest of the roster. Zion, he's going to start. Brandon Ingram, he's definitely going to start or definitely get a lot of minutes. Josh Hart is going to be a great 6th, 7th man. There's some pieces there. That's the crazy thing, is that there are actual pieces in this move for the New Orleans Pelicans. Is that they got, picks aside, they got a good haul of players to put around Zion. I'm sitting back wondering, I'm hearing people talk, when was the last time a great, a player who we thought was going to be a superstar, when was the last time a player like that came into the league and actually had a really good young core and supporting cast for them to build around? Coming into the league, not a year or two after they got that player, but coming right in. I mean, when Anthony Davis went to New Orleans back in 2012, he didn't have that. LeBron didn't have that. I'm thinking the only player I can really draw comparisons to was somebody like Tim Duncan, with David Robinson right there. But even then, he came into an established situation, not really the same as this. I think the Pelicans have the pieces right now, and they're pretty complementary for each other. It's not even like they're a bunch of jumbled, talented players. These players fit well together on the floor. I think you can find some sort of balance there, where they can grow together and compete a lot sooner than people expect. However, now that we see this, now that we see what they're doing, now that we see the players they have, I think it's also important to realize that it's still going to take some time. I've been saying this about Zion, this entire year, that he is, since Anthony Davis, the best prospect we have seen in the draft. I think that is clear. I don't think that's argued. I think he is superstar potential written all over him. He is a great player, seems like once in a decade type player to come out. However, usually even with those players, they put up good numbers, but for the most part, they don't really do a ton. They don't carry a team to the playoffs in their first year. LeBron James is really the only player who really early on in his career just kind of came in and dominated the league in a way. Was putting up 20-some points a game, was really showing that he has the chance to be one of the greatest ever. I think Anthony Davis has been great throughout his career, but certainly has not had the impact on the league that LeBron had when LeBron came into the league. And most guys don't. So I think that's important that even with all of the talent that Zion has, he's still a very athletic player, but he's still a rookie coming into the league, a shooting league without a jump shot. I don't think it's going to affect him nearly as much as that would any other rookie, but that's still going to have an effect on him. There's still holes like that in his game where he's not going to be a perfect player in the first season. And yes, I love the pieces they have right now, but I don't think that they're a contender. I don't think that they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. I don't really know if they should. I don't think that they're obviously not tanking, but I don't think the playoffs should really be the main focus of New Orleans right now. I think I'm looking at this team with a 2 to 3 year plan. With let's get a year of all these guys under their belts. Zion in his first year, but everyone else playing together. Let's see Brandon Ingram in a new situation. I think he can be really, really good. I think he has a ton of untapped potential, a scoring kind of potential where he can just put points up. Not many players can put, when you just need a pure kind of scorer. I think he has the potential to kind of develop into somebody like that, especially with the ball in his hands. I think Lonzo, there's still a lot of talent there, and it just has not been fully unlocked yet. And then I think a player like Josh Hart coming off the bench, he's just the only word I can think of for him is just solid. He provides consistency off the bench. He has some shooting off there. Just a good player for any team to have coming off the bench. So, I think these are certainly good players. They need a year. They need a year to really show us what they have. Ingram and Ball especially. Zion needs a year to develop. I think 2 years from now, we're looking at this team and we're saying, okay, they can start to fight for a playoff spot. And then 3-4 years down the line, that's when you start to talk about the actual contending nature of a team. But even then, you got to remember a player like Zion is coming into the league so young. We're not going to be talking about Zion entering his prime for about 6 years. Anthony Davis is entering his prime right now. His unequivocal prime of his career. He's about 26 years old. He was the last player like Zion. He was drafted in 2012. When these guys come out so young, that we have to remember that it takes a while for them to really hit the prime, that point in their careers where they are at their physical peak, where their game is developed, and they can really, really show off being a superstar. So I think you have to remember that with Zion. So I think the talk of them making the playoffs the first year, I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's what they should be shooting for. I don't think that's the point of this team yet. They still do have some cap space, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Personally, I would like them to bring in maybe a veteran or two. I would like them to bring in an established player. I want them to bring in people that, when you do a rebuild, sometimes people, I think the 76ers forgot this in their whole process, is that you need veteran leadership. That you can't just stick a bunch of young guys in a locker room. That won't work. You need some people to kind of guide the ship. You need some veterans to kind of say, okay, here's how you handle winning in the NBA. Here's how you handle losing. Here's how you handle long road trips, things like that. Oh, your shot's not falling in the past couple games. Here's how you maintain that confidence level, even though maybe you're not putting up the points. I think that's so important for players like Ball, Ingram, and Zion. So I think maybe getting another veteran in there or two with that cap space they have would be the right move. But I don't think making the type of move to the point where they should look to compete right now is the right one either. I don't want to bring in a player like Zion. I don't want to bring in any rookie and have them being in a competing situation first year in the league. I think in any sport, your first year needs to be a developmental year. It needs to be learning how to play an 82-game season. There are so many things that they need to learn, especially when you only spend 1 year in college basketball. There is such a steep learning curve for the NBA. I don't think that Zion should, or I don't think he could, be the centerpiece of a NBA playoff team. I don't think that's plausible for this first year. So one thing I haven't really touched on yet is this fourth pick. Is this that the New Orleans Pelicans have the fourth overall pick in a draft that is super top heavy, but in the top 3. They have the number 1 overall pick, so they're getting Zion. But at number 4, there's kind of 3 players that you're hearing the names go around. You're hearing Darius Garland, you're hearing DeAndre Hunter, and you're hearing Jarrett Culver. And all 3 of those players, really, really good, really good high upside kind of players. However, they're not in the same category as the top 3 of Zion, Morant, and Barrett. They're just not. There is a steep drop off. And I don't agree with the people saying that they should move this pick to maybe try to get a really good player, because I think there isn't a good player available for the 4th overall pick. I think teams know that this is a top 3 heavy draft, so the number 4 pick does not hold much value in this draft. So I don't understand those claims by people to go out and get a star with this pick. I don't think a star is available with this pick. And like I just said earlier, I don't think that they should be looking to contend or just yet. But what I think they should do is, you have this young roster. At that number 4 pick, the Pelicans need to say, okay, yes, they have all these young players they have right now complement each other. They need to pick the best available player. There needs to be no thought of, will Jarrett Culver or DeAndre Hunter fit into this system? Will Darius Garland fit into this system? Because I think any 3 of those players don't. I think Culver and Hunter possibly just make it more difficult for Ingram to get going. I think Garland, you have Ball and Drew Holiday. Why would you need another point guard? I don't think that these players complement each other in terms of promoting a good team chemistry in terms of on the floor. But what you have to do in this situation is, I love Ingram. I think he can be something, but he hasn't proven it. He hasn't proven it for a consistent amount of time. The jury is still out on him. Lonzo Ball is a really good player, but how good can he be? There's still talk of potential there, but until you see that potential, you can't bank on it. So I think you go out, you get the best available player in your mind. I think it's one of those three players. You get the best available player, probably of those three, and you stick them on the team. The way the NBA works nowadays is that we're talking about this big core with Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram and Zion. I mean, Zion's going to be in New Orleans for a little while, I think, unless it's just a complete and utter bust a la Anthony Bennett. He's going to be in New Orleans for a while. I think we can kind of bank on that. But Lonzo, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, the way in which people change teams nowadays, it's in 2 years you could have a completely different looking roster. So in that point, it wouldn't have mattered if Culver or Garland fits better into your system this time. What would matter is who is the better player in the long run. So I think at the number 4 overall pick, it's very important for the New Orleans Pelicans to just follow the very simple old and draft philosophy of don't pick, quote unquote, the right player for your system or your team. Just pick the best available player. They're a young team that's full of young, talented guys. Add another one to that mix. Add another one. Get minutes to these young, talented guys. Give them a year to develop. Give them a year to figure it all out. Give them a year to see, is Brandon Ingram, can he develop into the scorer we hope? Can Lonzo Ball be the point guard of the future? Will Jarrett Culver be a better forward than Ingram? Or Hunter be a better forward than Ingram? Is Darius Garland a better bet at point guard? Get these questions answered in this next year or two and just pick the best available player. I think that's the certain situation for New Orleans. And just quickly touching on those future picks, it is probably, arguably, the best situation, I think, for a GM in the NBA right now. There is so much. You have so many assets if you're New Orleans, to the point where you have first-round picks for years ahead, to the point where Zion could be three years into the league. This core could have gelled together. You're talking about a championship, and the Pelicans are going to have the picks then to make a move and go get a player to add to that core. Or 3 years go by, Zion's looking like a great player, but all these other people you have around him just aren't working. You still have way more picks to go out and get younger players to fill around him. And you look at the Lakers, I think these picks could be pretty good. I think it's a good time. I want to transition now to the Los Angeles Lakers and discussing this from their perspective, because at the end of the day, they got Anthony Davis. And while the Pelicans single-handedly won this trade, if you want to talk about it in that kind of context, if you like kind of using that lingo, the Pelicans won this trade. The Lakers got their guy. That sometimes in the NBA, when you have a chance at one of those top players, you just go grab them. I think the Raptors proved that this year, is that they had a shot at Kawhi. They had a shot to get a top 5, I think he's now proving himself to be the top player in the NBA, and he's probably only going to be there a season, unless you do something really big like win a championship, and then he might stay. But you have a chance to go to get a player like that. You give everything up. You go for that title. You go for that window. Yeah, DeMar DeRozan was a great player for your franchise, but Kawhi's a lot better, and if Kawhi's available for that much, you got to make the smart move and grab him. And it's a tough lesson in the NBA, but sometimes you just got to go for the star. I think the Lakers bidded against themselves. I think they needed to throw in Ball, Ingram, Hart. I think they needed to do that. They needed to throw in the number 4 overall pick. But once you start to get into that 2025 or 2024, the pick swaps, all that stuff down the road, I think that was just all extra the Lakers threw in there that Pelinka just added just because he needed to get Davis. He needed the win after this whole Magic Johnson fiasco. But they got the guy. They got Davis. And right now, people are talking about the roster in terms of Davis, Kuzma, LeBron. It's just kind of Davis and LeBron. I like Kyle Kuzma as a player. I just don't think he's as good maybe as people are making him out to be in this situation. I think he's a solid player, but it's Davis and LeBron on this team right now. And they're opening up, as I think even some sports books have them as a favorite for the title next year, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's going to be hard to bet against LeBron and Davis. But I think the most interesting part of their offseason now is what do they do with their cap space? Because it looks like they're going to have $23 million. I mean, other reports say that if Davis, I guess, declines his trade clause or whatever, that they could have more, but that never happens. So they're going to have $23 million. They're going to bank. The Lakers are going to have $23 million in cap space, which is not enough to go outside and sign a max player, and nor do I think they should go out and do that. That $23 million in cap space, that should be used for the Lakers to go out and get some solid players to put around Davis and LeBron. Because they have the two stars. They have the two guys who, LeBron did kind of start to look like he might, maybe have signs of slowing down. He got injured for the first time, but I think it was just such a weird season. I'm not going to count him out just yet. So I think they have two top 10, possibly top 5 players on that roster in LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We'll see this next season. So I don't think you need another star. I think the whole idea of a big three is starting to seem like maybe a little almost in some ways outdated. Is the fact, or you got to get the right kind of big three. You got to get the right kind of big three where they all work well together. Because look at LeBron's big threes in his career. If you look at Miami Heat, there was Chris Bosh. There was a player like Bosh who could be putting up a lot more points per game at any other team, but sacrificed and instead decided to do what's best for the team and kind of be that glue guy for them, even though his skills were a lot more than that. But it allowed Wade and LeBron to do their thing and ultimately win championships. Then you look in Cleveland. Kevin Love in kind of a similar context. Kevin Love should have been putting up a lot gaudier stats. He's a lot more talented than what he was shown to be in Cleveland and the way he got kind of treated around there. But when you have a ball-dominant point guard like Kyrie and you have a ball-dominant player like LeBron, you can't have a third player who really needs the ball a lot. So I think you're looking at a player like Anthony Davis, you're looking at a player like LeBron James, two players who are superstars, who are going to want the balls in their hands for good measure. I think the last thing you need is somebody like Kemba Walker, a player who is a ball-dominant point guard, a shoot-first point guard. You don't need that. You don't need another star. I think what's a lot more important for the Lakers to do is use that $23 million and go around and find some players on a budget. Find some players who maybe you can get Paul Millsap to sign for a little bit less because he might want to win. Maybe you go out and you get Bojan Bogdanovic, get him to add some depth to your team. I don't know what JJ Redick wants. He definitely can shoot the ball, but you're starting to wonder with his age. I don't know how much money I would love to give him. Malcolm Brogdon would be a really good player to add to this whole thing if he's able to become an unrestricted free agent, to really be able to test free agency. So I think there's players there that are good, but if you're the Lakers, you don't have a roster right now. You have two stars. You have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and then you have a solid player in Kyle Kuzma. But what else do you have? I don't think you need a traditional point guard because you have a player like LeBron who wants the ball in his hands and who can create himself from that forward position. But you're going to need you're going to need a backcourt. You're going to need some depth. With that $23 million, it would be a lot better spent. Instead of going out and trying to get one player with that $23 million, if you're the Lakers, you need to go out and get 3 or 4. You need to go out there, get some other veterans who maybe will sign for a little bit less to try and win and be with the Lakers and be with LeBron. I don't know if that's I don't know if players want to do that, but you got to try and get that anyway. You got to try and build up a team around them because at this point, they don't have that. And if you're going to go out and get a ball-dominant point guard like Kemba Walker who needs to shoot the ball a lot in order to be effective, that's going to hurt LeBron and Davis and not help it. You need to get a point guard like Patrick Beverley, a guy who can defend, a guy who can just do the little things that help the team, that doesn't need to score to be effective, because you need somebody on the defensive end of the floor because LeBron James takes possessions off, especially in the regular season. He's just He has had played so many minutes in his career through all those finals runs. He takes plays off. Anthony Davis, he's probably going to be resting some. I mean, look at Kawhi Leonard just went to was won the NBA Finals, and look how much he rested. I think other stars are going to start to follow suit in that way. So you're going to need some players off the bench. You're going to need some players around them. So I think that's going to be the most important thing for the Lakers going forward, is that it's going to be time to look at and say, okay, we need a team around Davis and LeBron, not just another player. And so I guess now looking at the NBA, looking at these teams, talking about the Pelicans, I think they're a couple years away from contending. Meanwhile, look at a team like the Lakers right now. If they can get that team around Davis and LeBron, it could really, really be something. But I guess going forward into next season, I just want to quickly touch on just how wide open the NBA is right now. Because for the past several years, you just heard those complaints from people talking about how it's just predetermined and that it's not even fun anymore because of the Warriors. Well, no matter what, even if KD and Klay come back, they're missing all of next season. The Warriors will not be a good basketball team next year. After these injuries, they won't. So the Warriors will be fine, but they're not going to be that good. Remember, they're all built off of star power. They don't have a bench. They don't have anything really past their superstars. I mean, Quinn Cook was getting meaningful minutes in the finals. That's how bad it got. So the Warriors won't be the predetermined favorites and won't really be, I think, even close to top of the Western Conference. I think they'll be like maybe the 7th seed, 6th, 7th. Or 5th maybe tops. I think that's a good place to kind of slot them in as of right now. Looking at the league and looking at the different teams, it's been a while since, I've heard people say that it's been a while, maybe since 2009, the last time you can remember a league that was really this wide open and this many teams have a chance at least making it to the finals. Look at the Eastern Conference alone. The Milwaukee Bucks, I could see them making the finals. Toronto Raptors, I mean, it all kind of comes back to what happens with Kawhi, but, coming off their championship, I can certainly see them making it again. The 76ers, well, I don't love their core. There's still talent there. I want to see what they do with Butler and Harris and who they re-sign if they're able to get either of them back. I want to see what they're able to do. But even Simmons and Embiid, I mean, if they get hot at the right time, if they get maybe a piece or two around them, I think there's potential there. I don't think it'll happen, but they're certainly not out of the question. Boston Celtics, I think kind of in the same vein as the 76ers. I don't think they're really there, but it would not be crazy. That's 4 teams right there at the Eastern Conference. Look over in the Western Conference. The Denver Nuggets, a team that finished second to the Warriors, 3 games back from them this past season. They're a piece away. I mean, Jokic is good. Jokic is super bona fide superstar material. What if they get a good player? What if they come out and they get a player like Kemba Walker? What if they get a scorer? You're really going to start to see, I think, them take off in a way that people don't really expect. The Portland Trail Blazers, yeah, I know they got swept by the Golden State Warriors, but that's just it. The Golden State Warriors stopped them. Who's going to stop them next year? Houston Rockets, and you're hearing all this talk around their team right now, and I can't really blame anybody for not liking to play with James Harden when he has that high of a usage rate, and that's the way he plays. But if they were to make the finals next year with their current roster, would you really be that surprised? I wouldn't. I think the Utah Jazz, I think they're right there. The Thunder, I wouldn't expect it, but I don't really want to count them out. If the Clippers get Kawhi, maybe, would you count on a run up from them? And my point is that there's so many teams. Oh, and obviously the Lakers. My point is there's so many teams that have a shot at it, have a shot at getting to the NBA Finals, where you're looking at them and you're saying, maybe this could work. Maybe they could figure this out. That if a couple balls bounce the right way, if they maybe do a good job in free agency, if there's players kind of play up a little bit more, who's to say that Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum can't win a finals next year? I mean, the Warriors aren't standing in the way, and it kind of feels like this crazy, since the Warriors aren't there, and yeah, LeBron now has a partner in Anthony Davis, but not a team to go around it, it feels like it's finally wide open. The NBA's at this point where it hasn't been like this in so long. Since LeBron joined the Heat, it hasn't been like this, because when LeBron was at the Heat, it kind of felt like the Heat at least were going to the finals. They were beat by beat by Dallas and they were beat by San Antonio, but it was kind of like the Heat were the team in the NBA. Then it developed into the Warriors, and that's been like that for 9 years, and now it's finally kind of going back to this wide open race, and I am so excited to see it because I think that I don't mind. I didn't really mind the Warriors dynasty. I thought it made the game interesting, but it'll be really, really cool to see all these different teams competing for it and just how wide open it'll be. I think this free agency is going to be a really, really important one in the league, and one that I'm really excited to see how it all plays out and who could possibly end up with the finals next year. And that'll wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate this podcast on your favorite platforms, as that does a lot to help grow the show. Remember, new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For more episodes, go down into the show notes and visit the link to jacksonneillpodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes to this sports podcast, as well as the Jackson Neill Music Podcast and my interview series, Anything Goes with Jackson Neill. New episodes of the Music Podcast on Sundays, with Anything Goes coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're a big fan of the show, maybe consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. For just a couple dollars a month, you can get access to bonus segments from both my sports and music podcasts, as well as bonus content from my interviews on Anything Goes. I write, record, and produce these podcasts myself as a full-time college student, so any bit of support really, really does go a long way. Link to Patreon down in the show notes. If you want to stay up to date on everything I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, @JacksonNeil20. Today's music is by Analog by Nature with their song CDK Sunday. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you all next time.